Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone's having a nice Saturday. I just got back from Miami and it's just as humid here, so it's fantastic. My name is Jordan Chariton. I'm going to moderate this panel, and I kind of named it the corporate media propaganda machine because I think the corporate media is a much graver threat than the Russian boogeyman and other grave threats we're told about by the corporate media. I've been lucky enough to be on the campaign trail this time around, as well as 2016 and a lot of other stories. And we have kind of like a nice cross-section of journalists here who cover a whole lot of different things. So my quick background, right out of college, I worked in the dungeon at feel free to judge, Fox News for 2 years. So I got plenty of stories to tell. Then I went across the street to MSNBC, which was actually just as bad. Then I did kind of a little bit of a side door. I did writing for a few years, digital production. In 2016, I joined the Young Turks, so that's where I got most of my in-the-field reporting experience. And that kind of showed me, I was on the campaign trail a lot with corporate journalists, which I put in air quotes, and it kind of showed me it was less so of a journalistic industry and more of a kind of high school elitist circle jerk, for lack of a better word. So I was there, and now I have my own independent outlet, Status Coup. We were just in Miami covering the first debate, and ironically, the Democratic National Committee / NBC denied us credentials to go inside, citing space constraints, which was not so. So joining us, we have right here, Aaron Maté. Aaron, he's right here in Brooklyn. He's been with Real News in the past, Democracy Now! He also writes currently for The Nation and is also a journalist for The Gray Zone, which is a great outlet. They've been doing great stuff from Venezuela to Colombia, a lot of great international stuff. Max Blumenthal, Ben Norton, Aaron, and others. Really, frankly, it's the only place that I read what's actually going on, the truth, from political assassinations in Colombia to not all of Venezuela wants the U.S. Actually, most of Venezuela does not want the U.S. and other things. And Aaron actually just won the prestigious Izzy Award for independent journalism. He I don't know how he does it, but he's been slaying the myths of Russiagate now for 2.5, 3 years. So thank God. And next to him is Katie Halper with the Katie Halper Show on WBAI. She has done really great work. Her pieces have appeared in the New York Times, Comedy Central, The Nation, Gawker, Jezebel, Huffington Post, Alternate, and she's also done stuff. I hear Sirius Radio, even the National Review, and some call her cute and somewhat brainy. So, that's it. Yeah. And like me, you could always depend on her for a good Twitter fight with the Democratic Party establishment. She loathes identity politics and, excuse me, yes, correct me, the weaponization of it. And next to her, thanks to Malaika Jabali, she joined us last minute. So Malaika is a writer, she's an attorney, which is awesome, and an activist. She's also a journalist, so she's been doing great work on politics, culture, and race. In Essence, The Intercept, Glamour Magazine, The Root, Current Affairs, as well as The Guardian. So thank you for joining. So we're kind of just going to have a casual conversation on the panel. We'll definitely do some Q&A. So I kind of wanted to start because, like, we all either working directly for or not indirectly have experiences dealing with the corporate media. So I kind of wanted to share my own story and then get your experiences. But in 2016, I mostly did not travel with any candidate. I mostly traveled independent of the candidates, so I could actually go to the rallies, like 2 hours before, speak with people. If you travel with the candidates, you're mostly at their mercy when they show up and things like that. And it was always amazing to me because when when I did travel with Bernie's campaign and Trump's campaign at the end, on the plane, it was almost like it was really like high school. These journalists that described themselves as neutral and unbiased were straight up just like trashing Bernie on the plane or propping up, oh, you know, Hillary's definitely going to win, these things. And it was just amazing to me if everybody could actually see what was going on and that these people are just humans with opinions pretending to be neutral. I call them kind of PR people with makeup on. You know, there's some good journalists, but they're also kind of mostly 20s, 30s, a lot of these people on campaigns, and they have their own biases, which is fine if you disclose it. I don't think bias in journalism is a problem if that bias is supported by facts. So I remember, I wish I taped it, but I was actually sitting in the back of the bus, and in front of me was Robert Costa of the Washington Post. I'm totally going to put on blast. And I saw through the crack in the seat that he was writing a piece on Bernie. And I could actually see him, like the words, he was writing, and then he would like delete and add in new words that were more critical. And I saw this like in front of me, and it was just like amazing. So that's kind of my anecdotal things. I also, my outlet covers a lot of stories that aren't getting coverage, like Flint and Standing Rock and things like that. What I've seen is kind of this cognitive dissonance where, like, I think Medina's been at some of those things too in the audience with Code Pink. And you see like American citizens, protesters getting basically tear gas, shot at with rubber bullets. I mean, just a military occupation at a lot of these things. And then you'll like go back to the hotel you're staying at and the news will be like, Trump tweeted something. And it's just this cognitive alternate reality. And I think the corporate media and this cognitive alternate reality is in large part how we reinforce and elevate oligarchy, because they are there to distract.
Oligarchy,
excuse me. They are there to distract. So that's some of my experiences, and I just wanted to kind of ask you guys what's been some of your experiences. Some of you have worked with corporate outlets for freelance pieces. Some of you have appeared in corporate outlets. I'll start with you. What's kind of been your experience? Because to me, corporate media and the advertisers are equally as toxic, if not more, than the donor class.
All right, I like that. So my foray into political journalism started off with, some people might be familiar with current affairs. I wrote a piece called The Color of Economic Anxiety. And it was a bit of a challenge pitching it, I think for a few reasons. One of them being that I wanted to do a deep dive of kind of this assumption of what the working class looks like, and the assumption that Black people across the board, with Black people who are working class in particular, aren't attracted and aren't these progressive policies and left policies and socialism doesn't appeal to them. And so in pitching it, you know, it's a long form article. I had to go to Wisconsin and do a lot of work for it. But I think a major challenge was the fact that in talking about them and saying that they were attracted to these policies, and they weren't just suppressed in Wisconsin, they weren't just suppressed because of, you know, Russian interference, but they were suppressed because of neoliberal policies that have, you know, decimated the region for decades. And then having to highlight the fact that these aren't necessarily as important to these communities, I think it made it a little bit difficult to pitch. So I went there, for instance, the fall of 2017. That was when I first started doing the reporting. And it didn't get published until October 2018 because I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody at Current Affairs. And then after that, I had, you know, a number of kind of reporters from those mainstream outlets hit me up and was like, yo, that was a great piece. I like what you did there. But it's harder if you don't have relationships with editors. And so I think the way that I kind of carved my way, even working with some sort of corporate outlets, was finding editors who are sympathetic, because even if the corporate overlords, you know, per se, don't value these perspectives, you might have an editor in there. And so, you know, that helped at News One, that helped at Essence, where I was able to talk about Fred Hampton and, you know, the US government conspiring against Black radical organizations. That helped at The Root, which is owned by Univision. I was able to put in a dig about Nancy Pelosi and capitalism in general. and at the Guardian. So knowing people has kind of helped me carve a way, but when you are Black and you are in the left, you're kind of marginalized on both fronts because people expect you to have a Black beat that is very kind of pro-establishment Democrat, and because of that, because I'm a leftist, it's harder to even just get just regular, let's talk about Medicare for all, let's talk about the failures of the liberal establishment. It's harder to also do that. So,
Ms. Halbert, your experiences?
My experiences, I guess, one of the most frustrating things for me is just reading the New York Times, and also I mean, you mentioned that you worked for Fox News and MSNBC, which is just as bad, and I actually think MSNBC in some ways is worse, because we expect it to be somewhat progressive. Like, we know that Fox News is awful. MSNBC, there's been this weird realignment too, where MSNBC is sometimes more hawkish than Fox News.
Sometimes. Bill Bristol slipped in the group.
Yeah, they have it seems like they have an internship program or something where they rehabilitate like Republicans and neocons and bring them over to work for them in MSNBC. But the smear, I mean, what I really focus on is the smearing of Sanders, because it's not just about Sanders, it's about the ideas that he represents. And as you pointed out, you know, it's one thing for Bret Stephens, however you say his name, which I don't like saying. It's one thing for him to really write hit pieces against the left and about Sanders, but it's another thing for reported pieces to do that. And I actually just wrote a piece at Fairness and Accuracy and Reporting, which goes through some of the pieces that this woman, Sydney Ember, uses, and particularly focuses on the sources she uses. And it's amazing, like, you can't make it up. First of all, she comes from BlackRock, that's her experience. She was an analyst at BlackRock, which is like the biggest investor in fuel, in coal, sorry. Her father-in-law was the CEO at Bain. And her sources that she goes to get to smear Sanders are, not only are they awful, but then she covers up who they are. So she had, to be fair, I think she's not just ideological, I think she's also not very smart. So, for instance, she actually included Otto Reich, like in her piece about Bernie's foreign policy. She included a guy who did PR for the Contras. So she got a quote from him. And I would have thought like an older person at the time would have been like, we don't do that. Like, that's too over the top. We don't go to conscience spokespeople, but they didn't. She like cited someone who works in education, but who doesn't. He's just a lobbyist and a lawyer. She cited someone who worked for Hillary's campaign, but failed to reveal that. And this woman dismissed Bernie as an old white straight right man. And then also the way that, like you referred to this, the weaponization of identity politics, and the way that there's a total selective focus on race and gender, that when it's relevant, it's incorporated into the discussion, relevant to the powers that be. And when it's an issue of something that like Malika covers, where, you know, when basically all these people who claim to be intersectionalists are everything but class. They're intersectionalists except for class. And they, John is here from the Independent, and he's one of the only people I ever saw cover this physical, there were 2 physical attacks on women that we know about during the primaries. They were both by Hillary men on Bernie women. One was Wendell Pierce, unfortunate because I liked him on The Wire, Bone from The Wire. He was charged with battery for attacking a woman who was a Sanders supporter, and the other one was Mumita Ahmed, who was hit by a guy who looked like old man time. Sorry if that sounds ageist or something, but he looked like a villain, and he hit her with his hand and a cane. Like, you can't make it up. And it got no coverage whatsoever. And you know, Hillary wasn't asked to disown it, to disavow it. And that, I feel like every day, if you pay attention to this stuff, it's just like total gaslighting. And it's infuriating.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statusquo.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statusquo.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.
Status quo.